The quiet reckoning. There's a version of you that's about to vanish. Not because you failed, not because you gave up, but because you finally saw the game for what it is. Everybody's performing. Everybody's narrating their own life in real time. The gym selfie, the grinding caption, the countdown to some goal they'll quietly abandon in 3 weeks. Everyone wants credit before they've done the work. Everyone wants the applause before the proof. You're done with that. Real change doesn't happen on camera. It happens in the empty apartment at 5 a.m. It happens on the 10th rep when your hands are shaking. It happens in the year nobody checks in on you because you stopped giving them a reason to. That's not a punishment. That's the price of admission. Right now, people have a file on you, a summary, a verdict. That's just who they are. Let them keep it. Filed, closed, forgotten, that's exactly where you want to be. Because the moment people stop watching is the moment you stop performing for them. And the moment you stop performing, you can finally start building. This isn't a disappearing act. It's construction. And construction is loud in one place only. Inside you. Everywhere else it's silence. Before we go further, understand exactly what you're walking away from. Because most people think the noise is just social media. It's bigger than that. The noise is the need to explain yourself before you've even started. The noise is asking for permission from people who've never done what you're about to do. The noise is measuring your week 1 against someone else's year 10 and calling that motivation when really it's just a slower way to quit. The noise is checking your phone the second you feel bored, because boredom used to mean something was wrong, and now you're starting to understand. Boredom is just where the real work lives. Nobody tells you that discipline is mostly just tolerating boredom on purpose. The noise is the group chat that celebrates staying the same. The noise is the friend who calls your ambition extra. The noise is your own inner voice, trained for years to seek comfort first and truth second. You don't need to announce that you're cutting it off. You don't need a speech. You just start being somewhere else, mentally, physically, in your habits, and the noise slowly loses its signal because you stop tuning in. No countdown posts, no starting today's speeches, just the unglamorous repetition of doing the thing, and then doing it again, and then doing it again when it stops feeling new. While the room is scrolling, you're working. While the room is explaining itself, you're proving it. While the room is waiting to feel ready, you already started. They'll forget you're even in the race. Attention is a spotlight, and spotlights make people perform instead of practice. Under a spotlight, every rep becomes a show. Every attempt becomes content. You start optimizing for how something looks, instead of what it actually builds. That's how ambitious people quietly sabotage their own growth, not through laziness, but through performance. They were working for an audience instead of a result. Get out of the spotlight. Out there in the dark is where you're allowed to be bad at something before you're good at it. That's not a weakness. That's the only place skill is actually built. Think about anyone who's ever gotten remarkably good at something. The public only ever sees the highlight reel. They never see the 1,000 attempts that didn't make the cut. They never see the version of that person who was, for a long stretch of time, mediocre on purpose. Because mediocre with repetition is the only road to excellent. So let them forget you. Every day they don't check in on you is a day you get to fail privately, adjust quietly, and improve without an audience keeping score. That privacy isn't isolation, it's protection. Here's the part nobody puts in the caption. The person you are today isn't going to get you there. That version negotiates. That version finds the reasonable excuse. That version says tomorrow and means it every single day, for years. Comfort isn't neutral. Comfort is compound interest working against you. Every day you let it win, it gets a little more entitled to winning the next day too. That's how a single skipped morning turns into a skipped month, and a skipped month turns into the version of your life you swore you'd never settle for. So there are really only 2 roads. Stay easy to explain, stay easy to predict, stay exactly where you are. Or go quiet, do the unglamorous work, and come back as somebody people have to reintroduce themselves to. Most people, if they're honest, already know which road they're on. The uncomfortable truth is that staying the same takes no courage at all. It's the default setting. It's what happens automatically if you don't actively choose something else. Growth is never the default. Growth is a decision you have to make again and again, especially on the days it doesn't feel like a decision worth making. Nobody warned you about the lonely part, the version where you're 3 months into a change nobody's clapping for, and the doubt creeps in. Is this doing anything? Would anyone even notice if I stopped? That question is the filter. Most people hear it and fold. That's fine. That's how it's supposed to work. The people who don't fold are the ones who find out what they're actually made of. This is the part of the story that never makes it into anyone's highlight reel. The stretch where you look exactly the same on the outside, while everything is shifting underneath. No one applauds week 7. No one applauds the version of you that showed up anyway on the day it rained, on the day you were exhausted, on the day something easier was sitting right there, waiting to be chosen instead. The middle is where almost everyone quits. Not because the goal stopped being worth it, but because the middle doesn't feel like progress. It feels like nothing. It feels like you're doing all this work and getting none of the reward. That feeling is not evidence that it's not working. That feeling is just what growth feels like before it becomes visible. If you can survive feeling like nothing is happening, you will eventually get to the part where everything happens at once. Because progress isn't a straight line you can see. It's pressure building somewhere underneath the surface, invisible for longer than feels fair. And then it isn't invisible anymore. That's why breakthroughs look sudden to everyone watching from outside. They only saw the release. They never saw the pressure. Think about it like this. Nothing that matters happens in a single day. The body that took years of training doesn't build in the week someone finally notices it. The skill that looks effortless in the moment took thousands of unremarkable repetitions to earn. The overnight success spent a decade underground before the world ever heard the name. So stop measuring your progress by whether other people can see it yet. Most of the important construction happens below the surface, in your habits, your standards, your tolerance for discomfort, long before it shows up anywhere visible. By the time people notice, you're not starting something. You're already finishing it. You're not waiting on motivation anymore. Motivation was never reliable. It shows up when it feels like it, and leaves the same way. It's a mood, not a strategy. And you can't build a life on a mood. What you're building instead is a system that doesn't ask how you feel. It just asks one question. Did you do it today? Cold, repeatable, unbothered by your mood. A system doesn't care that you slept badly. A system doesn't care that today is your birthday, or that it's raining, or that your favorite show just dropped a new season. A system just needs the next small action, and the one after that, and the one after that, regardless of the emotional weather around it. That's the actual difference between people who talk about change and people who become it. Not intelligence, not luck, not even willpower really. Willpower runs out. It's the presence of a system simple enough to survive your worst days. Feelings are useful, but they're not in charge anymore. Left unchecked, they'll talk you out of anything hard. So you stop consulting them before you act. You just act, and let the feeling catch up later. Or not at all. Some days it never does, and you do the work anyway. That's not dysfunction. That's maturity. So you go quiet, not off the map, just off the stage. You pull back from the noise, the scroll that numbs you, the validation you've been chasing instead of results, the fear of being alone with your own thoughts. And in that quiet, something starts moving. Small at first, a little more focused than yesterday, a little more follow-through, a little more appetite for the hard thing instead of the easy one. Give it time, and that appetite turns into identity. You stop bargaining with yourself at 6 a.m. You stop needing a reason. You already know no one's arriving to do it for you, so you do it. This is where the real transformation actually starts. Not in a single dramatic decision, but in the accumulation of 100 small ones nobody was watching you make. Nobody sees the moment you chose the harder option at 6 a.m. Nobody sees the meal you didn't eat, the scroll you cut short, the excuse you caught yourself building and refused to finish. That's fine. Those moments were never meant for an audience. They were meant to become you. That's the actual dividing line. Amateurs try something until it's inconvenient. The ones who make it don't rely on trying. They rely on who they've decided to become. And that decision gets reinforced in silence, rep by rep, day by day, while the rest of the world is busy performing progress instead of making it. There's a difference between someone who is trying to be disciplined and someone who simply is disciplined. The first person is still negotiating. The second person stopped negotiating a long time ago. The action isn't a struggle anymore. It's just who they are, the same way brushing your teeth isn't a struggle. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth. You just do it, because it's part of your identity now, not a decision you remake every morning. That's the target. Not forcing yourself through gritted teeth forever. Building a version of yourself where the hard things simply became normal. Eventually it shows. The way you carry a room. The way setbacks stop registering as emergencies. The way you stop chasing eyes on you and start chasing mastery over the one person who's actually been in your way the whole time. You, from 6 months ago. Here's the honest cost, because you deserve the whole picture. You will outgrow people. Some things that used to excite you will go flat. The world will look different, and different can feel like loss for a while. It isn't loss, it's shedding. You cannot build something new while your hands are still full of the old thing. Some relationships were built entirely around your old habits, the version of you who stayed out too late, who talked big and did little, who was easy to keep company with, because you never asked anything of yourself. When that version leaves, some of those relationships leave with it. Not because you pushed anyone away, but because you stopped being the person those relationships were designed for. That's not a tragedy. That's evidence you're actually changing, not just talking about it. If nothing in your life gets uncomfortable, it usually means nothing in your life is actually shifting. So let go of needing to be understood right now. You're doing it for the person you'll be a year from now, who's counting on you not to quit in month 3. Let go of the need to explain your discipline to people who never asked you to have any. Let go of the need to justify your silence to people who were only ever comfortable with your noise. Let go of the version of you that needed permission to take yourself seriously. Keep going on the boring days. Keep going on the days it feels pointless. Those are the only days that actually separate people, because anyone can work when it feels good. Almost no one works when it doesn't. Time is going to pass regardless. The days were always going to keep moving whether you use them or not. The only variable is what you hand to the future. The same person, or someone that 6 months ago version wouldn't recognize. One day you'll surface again, not with an announcement, not with an explanation, just with evidence. And people will ask what happened, what the secret was, what changed. They'll look for a single moment, a single trick, a single turning point, because that's easier to accept than the truth. You won't need to give them one. You'll already know the truth wasn't luck, and it wasn't talent. It was the hours nobody saw, and the version of you that refused to quit inside them. It was the mornings that had no witnesses. It was the version of you that kept a promise to yourself when literally no one else would have known if you'd broken it. That's not disappearing out of fear. That's disappearing on purpose, so that when you finally reappear, there's nothing left to prove.